Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. Welcome to another episode in our debut Spotlight series, where we shine a light on the freshest authors and their work. Today, that spotlight is on Uttama Kirit Patel and her debut novel, Shape of an Apostrophe, which is out now, and links to grab yourselves a copy are in the show notes. Shape of an Apostrophe is a raw, moving and thought-provoking novel about what it means to be a woman in a world run by men. It's about motherhood and the societal expectations surrounding it. It's about grief and loss and how we learn to live with it, and I could not recommend it more. It's been rightfully celebrated by the likes of Marianne Keyes and Avni Doshi, and I'm so excited to chat to Uttama today all about it. Uttama Kirit Patel is a writer and magazine founder and editor. She has lived in 12 cities across 3 continents. She holds an MPhil in psychology from the University of Cambridge and has previously worked as a journalist, education consultant, editor and marketing manager, just to name a few of her careers. Uttama has been a semi-finalist in the Raymond Carver Short Story Contest and was nominated for the Penn/Robert J. Dow Short Story Prize for Emerging Writers. On writing, Uttama says, "I write because it would kill me not to." Welcome, Uttama, to A Pair of Bookends.
Thank you. What an introduction.
Oh,
Thank
I'm
you.
so happy that I get to talk to you. I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I know some people have described this book as darkly funny, and and I would agree in certainly parts of it, but I honestly felt by the end emotionally destroyed.
More dark than funny
But
then.
in the best way possible. Like, I mean that in such a complimentary way. Like, I didn't want to leave
Yes.
it's Lena, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave her side. I loved being in her world, and yeah, I felt incredibly moved. That ending was like a gut punch. Oh my gosh. And do you know what? I have never felt so moved by somebody's acknowledgements. I thought your acknowledgements were
Oh,
so beautiful.
thank you. Thank you. A few people have mentioned that to me, and it feels reassuring that people read the acknowledgements.
Oh my God, I was having a conversation with my friend the other day who's a writer, and she was writing the acknowledgements for her new book, and I said I
Yeah.
really I love it. I love finding out like how
Yes,
your
I do.
grandma's sister's dog,
Yes.
inspired. I want all the behind the scenes stuff.
Yes, and thank you for saying that. The acknowledgements took me a good long time to write.
Oh, they're so beautiful, honestly, so
Thank you.
beautiful. Before we dive into your book and your writing process, though, I do like to start by asking what you're currently reading.
I am currently reading The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny by Kiran Desai, and I'm about 75% done, I should
Ooh.
say.
It's
And
quite a
I've
big
just,
one, isn't it?
it is a big one, and I have been sort of drawn into it slowly, and I'm reading it slower than I read other novels, which I always think is a good sign. I just want to stay there and linger for a while in
Yes,
there. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's
taking
beautifully
your time with it.
written. Yeah, lovely. Characters are just amazing. Yeah,
I love that. I think, didn't this book take her 10 years to write?
I think so. Yeah.
Crazy. Well, I mean, it's probably for the best that you're not flying through it, because
Yes,
I'd be
exactly.
quite insulted if somebody flew through a book and spent 10 years on.
I'm savoring it. If Kieran is listening, I'm savoring it.
I love that so much. And speaking of savoring, and I segue there, I completely savored your book. I loved it so much. I do have to ask, as this is part of the debut Spotlight series, what your journey has been like into becoming a published author. Could you tell us about that?
Oh, wow. That feels like a loaded question sometimes.
Yeah.
I think there's been some, big highs, there's been some lows,
Yeah.
and I've just learned so much in this journey. I think as a debut author, and I wasn't part of the book publishing world
Mhm.
before, so much is new to me.
Yeah.
I think, what the biggest challenge probably I faced was getting representation from an
Yeah.
agent. And that, took a number of rejections and lots of people unable to place the story somewhere. Is it an Indian book? Is it an Arab book? Is it a British book? Because I'm a British citizen.
Yeah.
And so I think that was, I faced a lot of sort of where does this book fit in the market, which
Yeah.
is just completely different kind of mindset from when you write a book, right? I never thought about it like that.
Hmm.
But then, of course, once I did get my wonderful agent and then, started pitching it to publishers, that's actually where it changed. And publishers were able to just see the story for the story that it is. And yeah, I think the journey with working with my publisher and editing, I love that part of it. After so long of writing something alone, to have other people work with you on it just felt like such a gift to me. And I had some brilliant editors. So I really enjoyed that part. Of course, it's so long, so you're waiting desperately for the book to be like out on a
Yeah.
shelf. And then, yeah, it's been amazing to just have people read it and meet people, talk about it. It's my favorite thing to do is talk to book clubs that are reading it. And no matter how many I've done of those, every single time there's a question that never came up before. And I find that magical and wondrous about storytelling. So, yeah, there's been a whole range in this journey. I've summarized it here for you in 30
I
seconds.
love that so much. No, it sounds like an incredible journey, and I'm so glad that it's made its way out into the world because I do think it's a really important story to tell, and I'm so surprised that they couldn't place it when it feels like a very kind of universal experience for so many women. So yeah, it's a kind of the conundrum that you explore in this book is something that's important to all women at some point in their lives. So
Absolutely.
I'm surprised
I
that they
was
weren't
surprised
immediately like,
too.
let's grab this and let's get it out there, you know?
Yeah. I was surprised too, and thank you for making that point because that's exactly what I thought. Like,
Hmm.
every woman at some point or the other, even every father, it's not just
Yeah.
women. Of course, it focuses on a woman. It comes across some of this, right, in their life,
Hmm.
and I what I have discovered in the publishing journey is when you don't neatly fit into a category as an author, you do have additional barriers to entering the publishing world. And that
Yeah.
was one of them that people saw the story, but also were wondering about me.
Hmm.
And I think that's the nature of the industry now as well, that, the author's marketability, unfortunately, is something also taken into consideration.
Yeah.
But I like to talk about that because it's important and lots of, authors face that from various places.
No, it absolutely is important. I do want to be shallow for a sec and talk about the whole you can't judge a book by its cover um, conversation because I do want to just say how much I adore the cover of this book. I'm assuming it's different in a few different places, but this is the cover that I've got.
Yes,
How would you
it's the
describe
same
it?
everywhere.
Oh, it's the same everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a woman doing a kind of tuck jump into dive into a pool. I want to say wearing
Yes.
looks like wearing a swimming costume, but I don't know if I'm right or a
Yeah.
leotard.
You're right. You've got that spot on, Hannah.
It's
And
beautiful.
thank you. I describe it as striking. And some people see the sort of fetal position in it. And
Yes,
yeah, so there's been quite a few interpretations of that.
it's
But
beautiful, and the
yeah, the
title as
color.
well. I love a good title. Where did Shape of an Apostrophe come from?
It came from a little girl that
Yes.
I spotted on the street once,
Oh,
almost 10 years before even conceiving of the novel.
wow.
And I was in Haji Ali, which is a shrine in Mumbai, and I was just walking along the road, and it was this narrow strip of road and water on both sides. And just on the edge of that road, almost like she was going to tip over, was a little girl. I don't think she could have been more than 3 or 4 years old. She had a black cloth over her. I wouldn't say she was veiled necessarily. She just was covered in that cloth.
Hmm.
And I just looked at her and she looked like the shape of an apostrophe. She was sort of hunched over. She was looking at the palm of her hands. And I took one photograph of her and I've got goosebumps. She's just sort of haunted me very kindly ever since. And when I started writing the novel, that image of her kept returning to me. Of course, you know why, having
Yeah.
read the story. And I think in relation to the novel, I used it. I put that little scene of seeing her in the novel. And without giving away spoilers, I can say that an apostrophe, by its definition, stands in the place of letters that have disappeared. And so symbolically, it's about what's untold or what's yet to be told, or, what we're carrying heavy in the silence,
Mhm.
the things. Yeah.
Just the way that you view the world is just so gorgeous. I want to read everything you've ever written, and I'm already so excited for the next book because I just think the way you view the world and the way you view people and the way you write about people and the world is just so there's just such a lyricism to it. It's so beautiful. I love that so much, and I think that's such a gorgeous story. On the title, even just
Yeah.
something as small as that, it's such a wonderful thing. What was the actual seed that grew into this novel?
It began again from something that is something that I was personally doing for myself. I was writing an apology letter to the biological child that I had decided not to have
Okay.
in favor of adoption. So since I was 16 years old, I've always wanted to adopt. And I just never had any physical maternal longing, I should
Mm,
say, that I have heard other women beautifully describe. I just never felt it. And for the longest time, I just thought that meant there was something wrong with me or something was missing. But I was very adamant that I was going to adopt. So when my husband and I started that process, I found myself writing this apology letter titled "To My Forsaken Fetus, parentheses female." And there is a there's a letter with the same title in the novel, though the contents are different.
hmm.
And as I was writing it, I thought, God, what are you apologizing for? Why do you
Yeah.
feel so bad? And it just struck me how bad I felt. And in that apology letter, I realized, though it was addressed to the child, that's not who I was apologizing to, right? It made clear to me that I had felt somehow I owed the world or my family or humanity something because of
Hmm.
my biology. And that's what I was apologizing for, right? This child was not even born. So I think from that I was angry as I was writing
Yeah.
it. Really bad. Then I felt angry. And I wanted to just present a character. And keep in mind, I started writing this in 2016. So the narratives around this were not as prominent as they are now.
Right.
So I just really wanted to create a central character who doesn't want to have children, doesn't have to explain, doesn't need some deep-seated reason for it, and just allow that full range of maternal ambivalence and desire or lack of desire or whatever it is on that spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an incredible conversation starter of a novel. I feel like these conversations are so crucial, and more people need to be having them. There is so much pressure and guilt surrounding motherhood it's kind of put upon us, and I find it. I don't think there's another word to describe it other than how frustrating and like it's almost debilitating at times,
Word.
And at
Right, right.
the start of your novel, your protagonist Lena finds that she's pregnant, and I think it's safe. I try not to give spoilers, but I think it's safe to say that it's in the blurb. And I just thought that your exploration of this experience, I found it so refreshing because there is this assumption that if a woman finds that she's pregnant, that, we should feel grateful, we should feel like we've been blessed, by,
Yeah,
and I understand, that there are women, there's other conversations about, women not being able to get pregnant and, there's that and, them wanting to get pregnant and not being able to. But I
yeah.
think the assumption is that women should automatically want a child if they become pregnant, and that takes away our choice of the matter.
I think it starts, even before a woman's pregnant, right? The
Yeah.
assumption is that a woman will want to be pregnant or will want to
Yes.
be there. And then if you're pregnant, you must want to keep child.
Well, people
And
even
you
say
must
it to
really,
children, don't they? They
yeah.
say to like little girls, like, "Oh, when you have a baby, like, it's like she's a child. Stop it! Like, what do you mean?"
Exactly. It's so ingrained. And it's across cultures. It's across cultures.
Yeah.
And I have many friends who are women who have decided not to have children or
Hmm.
not parents. And the same feeling of still feeling like there's an expectation that they should have acted differently exists,
Mm,
no matter what their decision is. So, you're right, there's the whole range of experience with infertility
yeah.
and reality of a woman's body. Then there's, pregnancy by choice or by mistake. And I think the underlying thing is just, yeah, it is choice. It is a
Hmm.
choice. And we need not be made to feel like one or the other
Yeah.
is better or worse. Or I think the word too often associated with that is selfish, that somehow women who
Hmm.
choose not to be mothers are selfish. And I think that's a narrative that really needs to change.
Absolutely.
Just I think any behavior where women are serving themselves or satisfying themselves is somehow translated to being selfish. And I don't think that's the same for men.
No, definitely not. And a lot of the people putting these restrictions around the world on women and making that choice even harder for them, it's a lot of men making those decisions and it's not their body. And that's a really important thing to remember. And, as you said, it is a very universal experience, this pressure on women to become mothers and this choice, it is a very universal experience. But I wondered if there was anything sort of specific about Lena's experience that was with Indian cultures.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's really just intensified
Yeah,
of the Indian culture, and then further intensified by being in an Islamic country,
yeah.
right? So it's like double dose of
Hmm.
patriarchy. And I think, yeah, this idea that I spoke to of selfishness, I think
Hmm.
in a culture that's very community
Yeah,
focused and yeah, it's almost without, it goes unsaid, what one is expected to do or contribute. And that's how deep it goes
hmm,
in your belly. Like even the amount of times I've said this thing about writing that apology letter to that
yeah.
child, every time I say it, there's still one kick of guilt that is there that I just like put it back away with them. So I think Indian culture is, Arabic culture. There's just the sort of gendered expectations in
Mm,
domestic life are still really strong, and it's parenthood, it's even marriage.
yeah.
It's any role in the house, I think, where professional spaces have sort of progressed a bit further in equity for men and women and other genders. I think in domestic life, in those cultures, as well as others, but really intensified in those cultures, in the domestic space, the roles men and women are playing out are super traditional. And there is, yeah, I call it sort of this sexism that's masked in the minutia of daily life, who is in the school chat group coordinating
Yeah.
their children's social activity, who's making travel plans. Dad is a hands-on dad. There's no hands-on mom because women are just held to different standards,
Mm,
parenting. And so even in seemingly progressive, modern households, yeah, you see these patterns and the ones around parenthood are quite strong.
absolutely. I mean, you're so right. I remember one of my friends who is a mother telling me that she'd been added into a WhatsApp group about a children's party for one of her children to go to, and she wanted to message the group and say, "Can you add like here's the dad's number? Can you add him into the group because he does a lot of the party admin?" And there was a part of my brain that was like, "Oh my God, I really respect you for doing that." And then there was a niggling thought of judgment there. And I was like, whoa, where's that come from? Because I know her and I know how much of an incredible mother she is. And it wasn't a rational part of my brain,
Yeah,
having that
yeah.
thought. And I caught the thought and I was like, where has that judgment come from? And it's an
Yeah.
internalized thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, good on you for catching it first of all, right?
It's a close one.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I think there's so much intentionality needed in
Hmm.
order to bring those two to equal ground, men and
Yeah.
women in parenting. And it happens with myself and my husband as well. We have to be so intentional. It's not just I think something that I've really learned from him is the reverse also holds true in that he doesn't love being praised for doing basic
Mm,
parenting tasks. He doesn't love that. It makes him feel like he's somehow excluded or that's
mm,
unnatural for him to do when he's like, I'm just as much a parent
yeah,
as us. And because we've adopted, we've both had nearly the exact same experience. I haven't carried the child, neither has he.
yeah,
Right. So even in the reverse, um, I think people often forget that part of it too.
yeah.
But, I'm not gonna defend men in parenting, but they should not be excluded from the
No, you're
conversation.
right. Yeah, absolutely.
Chance. Yeah.
There is a line that really struck me in your book, and you write, the idea that motherhood was assumed, yet active fatherhood remained a choice worthy of high praise, infuriated her. And I think that's, that just captured what you just said there.
Yeah.
It is perceived as if a man is being active in fatherhood, that it is worthy of high praise. And it's, when Lena arrives at this like mothers group, and is it Ishan? Is that how you say his
Yeah,
name?
Ishan. Yeah.
Ishan arrives at this group, and all the women are like fawning over him, and they're like, "Oh, it's so wonderful to have you here," and it's like, "Why?"
Exactly. You're like, I'm here. Just
This is a group for parents, and they're like,
yeah,
"Oh, well, the men aren't usually here." I'm like, well, that's
yeah.
their problem.
Which is such a common thing, like
Yeah,
it's such a common thing. Yeah, we make so many gendered presumptions about
absolutely.
people, right? Even, again, like not all men want to be breadwinners.
Mm,
There's so I think this just entering from a place of not making a presumption
yeah,
would be a good start.
yeah.
Just go neutral, and see what comes to you. I don't know.
100%. I really want to ask you about the dynamic between Lena and her mother-in-law. I think it's such a her mother-in-law is such a fascinating character, and for you to tell us about what inspired their dynamic.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law sort of relationship and characters, it's written about, there's
Yeah.
films about it, it's the narrative that exists. But I actually played on that quite a bit
Hmm.
because I'm like, why does it still exist in
Yeah.
this way? And I really wanted to examine what it is about the two of them that pits them so against each other.
Hmm.
And I think essentially it comes down to, women really trying to fight for their space, wherever that space is, whether it's in the same household, whether it's in your relationship with another human being. So in her case, her husband, and for mother-in-law, her son. But just we're constantly on the defense.
Hmm.
We're constantly on the defense as women in some of these domestic circumstances. And so, by the nature of that, we're not assuming best intent of the other person.
Yeah.
And I think with Lena and Auntie M is such an outrageous character and has such specific beliefs and
Mm.
superstitions. And, on the surface, she seems ridiculous and absurd, right? And but I love her. She just
Yeah.
is how she is. And I really wanted to have this, Lena's desperately sort of fighting for this approval, or she's trying to prove herself to her mother-in-law.
Hmm.
Her mother-in-law is not trying to prove herself to Lena.
No.
So I sort of like that contrast between them. And eventually it's like, yeah, you're never gonna find that in another person. You're gonna have to
Mm.
give that to yourself. And Auntie Hem has had more life experience giving that worth to herself. So yeah, it was a little bit tricky to go into that relationship
Mm.
and sincerely excavate it
Yeah.
without falling into cliches. It took time. That
Mm.
relationship changed a lot in the writing as well. And I spent a lot of time trying to understand Auntie M and get to the bottom of her behavior.
Yeah, I mean, some of her behavior seems very far-fetched, but I can also absolutely see it happening. And
Yeah.
I think it's such an accurate sort of reflection of how women are so often made to feel like they need to compete with each other. And I think you're right, like the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law dynamic has so often been shown in culture as this quite like fractured dynamic, I suppose.
Yeah.
And yeah, at times it's hard to believe what Auntie M gets up to.
But she's very real. And
Yeah.
there's lots of Indian readers who are like, yep, I know her. Um, I also like, I don't know if this even comes through, but I wanted to show between them, like you can come to a respect
Mhm.
without necessarily having a friendship. You can
Yeah.
come to a peace without necessarily, resolving everything.
Yeah.
And and I feel like in 20 years after this, the time in this novel has passed, like they'll be fine. They'll be fine with
Yeah.
each other, but I think we meet them at a time in the novel when they're just battling it out. So
Mm. But I think where they arrive at is a really kind of beautiful thing. Even like you said, it's not entirely resolved. I'm trying to be really careful here, but it's not entirely resolved, but they have found a kind of respect, and they've found a way to sort of move forward. And where we leave them, I feel like is a sort of place that makes sense for everything that's happened before.
yeah.
It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, they completely despise each other. It's not anything like that.
Yeah.
Which is nice because there are parts in the book where you're like, how are they going to come back from
I know.
this?
And I also wanted to show a little bit of a critique or sort of, what do you call it? Like a weakness in Lena's character. I don't
Hmm.
know if that's the right word, but just she's so judgmental at the same time that she doesn't want anybody to judge her, but she can
Mm,
be judgmental. And I think that particularly in those relationships, in-law relationship, that there's a lot of judgment that is just you go straight to judgment before you've tried to understand something. And that's also deeply ingrained from, the dynamics of households and relationships and the prize son, and now someone's taking him away and all that kind of stuff. But judgment goes both ways. And I
no, it
think,
absolutely does. You're right. Yeah. There's issues on both sides. There's the
yeah,
judgment of a woman making the choice to put herself and her career first and not be made to feel guilty about that. And there's, the position of judgment of why have you chosen to, give yourself up to motherhood, and why have you succumbed to that? And there's
yeah,
issues on both sides. The ultimate thing that we all want is to have that choice.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But Auntie M's home, and sorry, I should say Lena is living with her in-laws in Dubai, and they have this gorgeous home, as it's described. I can imagine be a very huge home, but it feels very claustrophobic, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
a
what I
very
wanted.
it's a very suffocating environment, which is so crazy because you can imagine such a vast piece of this vast building, and yet it just feels like I
Yeah,
want to escape. I don't want to be in this home anymore.
yeah,
Could you tell us a little bit about that
yes.
and the choices you made writing, yeah, this atmosphere and
Yeah.
this home that they live in?
Yeah, I'm glad you felt that way. Well, I'm not glad you felt claustrophobic, but that's what they intended.
That was the intention.
That was the intention. Yeah, two things. One, very intentionally chose Dubai as the setting,
Yes.
being this opulent, larger than life space, place, to contrast that with
Hmm.
how imprisoned these characters are in the expectations that other people have of them.
Yeah.
So that was a very intentional choice. And yeah, I think the house and the villa they live in is the way it's described. It's got its own name, and there's a pool and the steps down to the beach, and it's, facing the Atlantis. And yet, you can live in a mansion and still have poverty of choice. And I think it's just how Lena feels when she's in that space that makes her feel small. It's like it's as if everything is closing in on her when she's there. She can't be herself in that space. She's sort of always looking over her shoulder, like who's listening. She's really wary, as she should be, because Auntie M's snooping in
Mm.
their bedroom. So,
Yeah.
they're unfounded fears. And yeah, it was. also just even the family, right? They're educated across the world.
Hmm.
There's a lot of wealth there. They own a business. They're in the diamond business. Like it's all bling, bling, bling.
Yeah.
And I think I definitely wanted the novel to focus in on a family like that, on a space like that, on a home like that, because it's like despite accumulating that wealth or that comfort or that luxury, you really haven't gained anything
No.
if you're still just stuck in the same condition that, somebody who isn't educated or who hasn't had that exposure, who hasn't had that choice. What exactly have you gained by surrounding yourself by this, right? And I think, you know, I don't think this novel would work in if I'm describing a woman in a village in India in extreme poverty, like she
Hmm.
should not be thinking about any of the things that Lena's thinking about because she
Yeah.
just needs to survive. But when we are at this level
Hmm.
of, everything, education, exposure to diversity, and yet we're still stuck, that
Hmm.
I really wanted to question that. That's what I wanted to expose. Like that responsibility really does need to fall on people in those circumstances to change things, to shift it, to stop that stuff from getting inherited.
Mm. I mean, it was so interesting to read about and to read about the sort of wealth and class divides as well. One of the most important relationships in Lena's life is it Raja? Is that how you say his name?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Who has been with her family from the very start, from the start of her life, I want to say. And I can't think of the term. Is it? He's a domestic worker, isn't it? It's domestic worker.
yeah,
Yes. Roger's a
yeah,
domestic worker, and I found it really interesting to read about how differently Lena and Ishan's family treat domestic workers. You know, in Auntie M's home, it's very much like, oh no, the servants can't sit in specific areas. They have to go to the bathroom in like this specific area, and it's all that kind of fussiness and sort of pet. It feels petty, this
yeah.
petty behavior about like, well, no, we don't treat them as the same. There's that inequality there. I'd love for you to talk about writing Roger's character and what he represents.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for asking that question. It's really important part of the novel that often doesn't get as much attention, but there's this real entanglement of
Hmm.
life, domestic workers often living in the same household as their employers, often for generations or at least lots of years. It's quite common in the Middle East. It's quite common in India. And yet there is this underlying, and I'm going to just say it, it's dehumanizing
Yeah.
the the way that they are treated because it's under a sort of delusion
Mm.
that you're treating them as family, that you are giving them respect. You've given them this space, you're sending clothes and food back to their children and whatever it is. And it's sort of like you're convincing yourself that you've done a good thing as an employer. But when it comes to the heart of the matter, there's such a stark segregation. And those
Hmm.
class divisions, and in India, the caste divisions, they run really, really deep.
Yeah.
And Raja's character, I think Leena's love for Raja is just unquestioned, unquestionable. Like it's the one person in the novel, I think, for whom she has no judgment,
Hmm.
you know. And again, it's like he was basically another parent in
Yeah.
her life. But she then meets Raja's daughter in
Mm.
India. And I really used that relationship and that character, Shobha. Shobha is my favorite character because she is a servant who is not servient. She is unapologetic
Hmm.
and, is also after the same thing as everybody else.
Yeah.
So wants to make something of her life. And I really wanted to show the way Lena expects Shobha to be grateful to her,
Mm.
expects Shobha to be nice to her. And Lena would never expect those things of herself or of somebody else in her same class or group or whatever it is. And so I sort of use some of those ways to show, like, yeah, just to reflect on that behavior. I think it goes unspoken
Yeah.
because this is happening in really, honestly, really powerful families, really
Yeah.
wealthy families, right? In the Middle East. I mean, there's so much there's so much out there about the mistreatment of domestic
Yeah,
workers across countries. They don't have access to their passport. I mean, from that's a start, but from that to abuse to whatever it is, they're
yeah,
just, and it's sort of not getting, it's not, I think it's not getting the spotlight that it deserves because of where it's taking place and in what kind of households.
yeah,
But I truly believe that, looking back on this way, like history will look at this unfavorably. And, there's some of the living quarters of domestic help in places like Hong Kong and Singapore. It's like there's no windows, you're inside a bomb shelter, you're sort of living in a space this big. And you could be the head of an investment bank doing that. Like it's just this the contrast
it's
between
crazy.
yeah, and I think so I couldn't tackle the whole topic, but this was just giving some glimpses of that. And really what I wanted to show is just Lena just being sort of brought down to earth
Yeah,
from her all the presumptions she was making about how Shoba should behave towards her. And of course, Auntie M and even Lena's aunt, they're of a generation that it's like, yeah, that was just the way. Like the help uses a different bathroom. They use different utensils to eat and drink from. It's absurd.
but why? Why do they need to do that? It's so hard to even comprehend. I mean, like I've grown up working class in Britain, and obviously it's not necessarily the norm here for
Yeah.
us to have domestic workers in the household. But I mean, especially not from the class background that I've got. My only very small, limited experience of that is going to work as an au pair in Italy for a summer. And I worked for a very rich family out there, and was treated very well. I got on really well with the parents of the baby I was looking after, and there was a moment where I was left with the grandma of the child, and the baby was having a nap, and because the baby was having a nap, I didn't give the baby his afternoon snack because he was going to have a meal, like probably
Yeah.
an hour after the nap finished. So I thought, well, I've missed snack time now. I want him to be able to eat his tea. I thought that would be the right thing,
Yeah.
considering that was how I was brought up. And the way that I had no idea what the grandma was saying to me, apart from that she said stupid, the way she was screaming at me, I was like, you wouldn't treat somebody else this way. You wouldn't treat, you're seeing me as beneath you, or you wouldn't be speaking to me in this way. It's an honest mistake. You
Yeah.
could have a normal conversation with me about this and say, no, give him the snack now. I'd rather him have it than not.
Yeah.
Next time, give it to him. There's a way of having those conversations. And that just felt like, I wasn't perceived as somebody equal to her in that moment. Um,
Yeah.
but,
Well, firstly, sorry that you would experience that. And
no, thank you.
that's exactly yeah, that's exactly what I'm sort of saying there. Like that way you just wouldn't talk to somebody like that,
No,
right? You respect that with the same way that you do yourself or your peers. I think another thing that, this is maybe particular to some countries and not others, but even when say families are talking and Auntie M might be talking to a friend and she's referring to the person who works in her house, she'll just say, "Oh, your maid or your servant," or you won't call them by name, so you are just that's it. They're a
they're just their
category.
title.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, oh, do you have a helper? Does your helper do this? Like the person has a name, and we should use their names. Anyway,
Absolutely.
I could go on about this forever. So I'll
No,
stop.
it's such an important topic, and it's crazy because I think the only other book where I've seen that experience represented is her name, is it Bali Kaur Jaswal?
Yes, yes,
Her book
yeah.
about domestic
I read
workers
it.
was
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah,
And I think that's the only other book I've seen that experience written about apart from this one, which is just
yeah,
insane.
yes. And
Very
she and
important topic.
I read her book maybe last year, in fact, and I went to a talk of hers, and I just yeah, I reached out to her to say like thank you for writing that. Like it just isn't represented anywhere. So
No,
yeah,
it's
no,
not.
great book.
But thank you for writing it. Thank you for putting this story out there. It's so important. There is so much that I want to discuss with you, but I'm aware of time. I do quickly want to speak about Lena because obviously she is the protagonist. And before I get into the sort of end matter of the podcast, I feel like it'd be remiss of me to not bring her up because she is so extraordinary, and I think she's got so many kind of contradictory elements of her personality. She is a very complex woman. She is at times very fearless, but then at times she's so afraid, and she's dealing with a lot, you know. She is living in a home that is not her own. She feels really uncomfortable in this environment. She's pregnant. She doesn't know what to do with that situation, but she's also, you know, living through a horrendous loss. You know, she feels a lot of guilt about her mother's death, but she's also navigating the aftermath of her father's death. Could you tell us a little bit about, I know we've not got loads of time, but could you tell us a little bit about her character and all the things that kind of make Lena Lena?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many
I
things.
know.
Yeah, but you've described her wonderfully, so I don't have,
Sorry.
um, no, 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 no. I think you point out her grief, and I think
Yeah.
what is really important
Yeah.
because of where we are in time when the story happens. And I think a lot of her initial hesitations, fears, come from that grief because I think she's sort of clutching onto what she thinks might be the only family she'll ever have anymore. And so that sort of makes her, I think the voice in her mind is really strong and bold, and
Yeah.
she occasionally is able to get out and say something that is reflective of what she actually feels. But most of the time, she isn't really. And I think that's coming from, yeah, sort of insecurity that comes from that kind of grief, right? And particularly now you no longer have either of your parents, and she had a very close relationship with her father.
Hmm.
And I would like to think that sort of towards the end of it, that grief sort of turns into a power and an enabler in a different way. But the grief is a big part of her. And I think that to me feels like a great compliment. I didn't want her to be liked. We do not need to be liked. And I
Hmm.
really wanted to put that across, particularly for women, because it's almost that's another assumption that we have to be likable.
Hmm.
And I wanted a character that, yeah, maybe she's like, maybe people like her, maybe she doesn't, but that's not an important part of who she is. So I think there's very little about her where she's trying to be someone that she's not, but
Yeah.
actually her conflict is just between what she's just lost,
Yeah.
what she's fearing she will lose. And she's at a point in her marriage where the marriage doesn't feel secure to her either.
Mm.
That's a big part, loving somebody and starting to doubt so many things about them or your relationship with them. So yeah, she she is going through a lot now that we say it all out loud.
I mean, we could have done a whole other podcast on Ishan and how
Yes,
frustrating that character was.
yes, you're allowed to dislike him. Everybody dislikes him.
Just so passive and like just
Yeah.
you know, I understand that there are elements of it of wanting to be respectful, and it's maybe a cultural thing that he's, you know, being respectful of his parents' wishes, and there's certain things that he feels he needs to do, like by the book, whatever that might mean. um
Yeah.
but he is just so frustrating. I'm like, look after your, she's pregnant. Like, why are you going off on 5 different trips a month? Like, stay with
Well,
her, do
I'm
something.
gonna I'm going to share something here, Hannah, which when you circling back to the beginning, you asked me about the publishing journey.
Yes.
One of the things that kept coming up in writing, in editing, whether it was drafts with whoever it was, okay, including right up until the very final draft, so many times I was, challenged, asked, are you sure, Uttama, that this character is this way? Are you sure? Because he doesn't seem believable. And where, with so much else, I was like more than happy to take most editorial advice. I was so hell-bent. I was like, trust me. You have to trust me, Mrs. John. And the most wonderful thing is when the book came out in the world, and yes, particularly Indian readers, but Arab readers, um, readers from various countries of
Yeah.
in Africa, like so many book clubs I've been to, they're like, "Yep, I know Anishan. I know," and I was like, "Thank you."
No, it makes so much sense in terms of the story, but my God. I was like,
That's
let me at him.
their mission accomplished.
Oh my gosh, I have absolutely loved chatting to you about this book, and I honestly could have spoken to you for hours more about it. If it wasn't apparent, listeners, I absolutely adored this book, and I would like to go out on the street with stacks and stacks of this and just
Ah.
hand it to everybody because I want everybody to read it. I want to talk to everybody about it. So, as I said at the start, listeners, links to grab yourselves a copy are in the show notes. I will try and find links for various places around the world so that you can all get yourselves a copy, and please come and chat to me about it. Before I let you go, Uttama, I would like to finish by asking for a recommendation. What would you like to recommend to the listeners?
Oh goodness. A specific recommendation, right?
It
A
can be
book.
anything, books, TV, film.
Okay. I'm going to recommend a book which
Amazing.
has made an impact on me this year, which I
Amazing.
think will forever. It is the book Things in Nature Merely Grow
Oh,
by Yi Yun Lee.
oh my
And
gosh, I've heard about this.
yeah, it is a memoir of a, well, I'll just say what I guess the back of the book will say. It's a memoir, and Yi Yun Lee is a mother who has lost two sons to
Yeah.
suicide. And it is one of the most profound things I have ever read about grief and loss. And
Mhm.
though it sounds so devastating
Yeah.
and unfathomable, she has written it with a type of cerebral clarity that I just haven't encountered anywhere else. And I think anybody who reads it will come out stronger and probably just more capable of facing something or the other that's coming their way in life.
Mhm.
Hopefully never as hard as that. But yeah, highly, highly recommend that book.
I mean, it's so incredibly inspiring, and it's astonishing how generous that she is to write about that experience, because I imagine that will help so many people. But to come out of that and, be able to write about it, I just think
Yeah,
is incredibly inspiring. I don't really know how else to describe it, but I
yeah,
definitely want to get my
absolutely.
hands on that. So
Absolutely. Yeah, it is very generous of her. That's a great way of describing it. Yeah.
definitely. I don't want to let you go. It's that obvious. Is there more coming from you? Are we getting another book along the way?
There will be more coming from me, and then I would just end with that.
Well, I can't wait, and I hope that I can have you back in the future on the podcast.
Love to. It was so fun to chat to you. Thank you
It
so
was
much for
no,
having me. It was a
thank
joy.
you so much. I've absolutely loved this. Where can the listeners find you online, if anywhere?
They can find me on Instagram. I'm at Uttama, or on my website, which is
Amazing.
uttamakiritpatel.com. And, I love hearing from readers. I love hearing from people. So if you reach out to me, I will respond to you.
Amazing. That's so generous as well. Uttama, thank you so much for your time. I know we have a drastic time difference, but I'm really grateful that you've made the time for me. I loved your book. I loved this chat. And listeners, please go and grab yourselves a copy of Shape of an Apostrophe, which is out now, and go give Uttama a follow and drop her a message once you've read the book. I'm sure she'd love to hear from you.
Yes, I
Um,
will.
Lastly, thank you so much, listeners, for listening. If you want to give us a follow, you can do so at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram and at A Pair of Bookends on Twitter and TikTok. Do give the podcast a review. We appreciate it. And for extra content, you can find us over on Patreon. That is all we've got time for. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you again, Uttama.
Thank
And
you.
goodbye.
Bye.